Hello and welcome back to Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash.
And I'm Bernice.
And we're not pundits.
We are just two women who know what a ruck is.
Well, the URC is on pause for the summer, but there are plenty of URC players that are in action, whether it is for their countries or whether it's for the British and Irish Lions. We will be talking about the Lions warm-up match against the Los Pumas in this episode, as well as touching on some of the shaky stuff that's happening in one South African club with a couple of rumours that have come out in the South African press. And we'll be ending off the episode as we normally do with our usual segments: red card, yellow card, penalty, and rugby confessions. But let's start by talking about the British and Irish Lions. They lost to the Argentinian side 24-28. But what a great match it was to watch, Bernice.
No, definitely. I thoroughly enjoyed that match. And I just really enjoyed watching Argentina in that match as well. And massive congrats to them for taking the win. But yeah, I think Argentina looked very sharp. It didn't look like it was the first match of the international season. Yeah, just straight from the get-go, they looked sharp and up for the match. And I thought that there were a lot of standout players in the Argentinian team. I think as a collective, they also played very well, but I think there were a few players that stood out. For example, Garcia, Albanos, Isgro, I thought they had great games. I think Garcia's distribution of the ball was so quick. Isgro in the air, like he was so good under the high ball, very, very good. Yeah, and it was just good to see Argentina perform so well. I think there would probably be a few Lions supporters that would think, oh, that would be very disappointed with the performance,
I'm
which
sure.
I get, but I just think, I don't think there's too much to worry about just as yet. I think, it's the first game of the season, testing out combinations, new players coming in. So I don't think it's anything abnormal. And also, they only lost by 4 points. So I don't think it's too worrisome. There were also a lot of Leinster players not included in
Yeah.
the matchday squad. So yeah, I think there's a lot of room for improvement, and there's also a lot of time where they can test out combinations. And I know it probably won't feel to them like there's a lot of time, but yeah, there's still a few matches where they can play around with combinations and players. But yeah, what did you make of that match, Tash?
I'm not disappointed actually in how they played, although they lost and I wanted the Lions to win because I am a
Hmm.
Northern Hemisphere gal, if you couldn't
Hmm.
tell by my accent. A couple of teething issues, as there always is. You've got a lot of lads playing together who normally play against each other, whether it's at club level or whether it's on the international stage. But for me, a couple of clear standouts. Matt Hansen, when he came off the bench. For me, I was surprised when he got picked for the Lions squad, but he really proved himself. So great carrier. He's also got this kind of style about him where he looks more like what I would say a football stroke soccer player, however you like to call the sport, I suppose. He's a lot more
Hmm.
lean, so he's almost kind of difficult to tackle, but he just keeps running and he keeps running. So, yeah, great impact off the bench. Baby Rhino, Ellis Genge. Oh, that line break that set up the Tadburn try was just beautiful. And I think in the scrum as well, he was a beast. So I'm really happy for Genji. I really hope he gets to start against the Wallabies because he really deserves it. And I've watched Genji a lot over the years because he's played for my English club and he's now with Bristol Bears. And in the semi-final against Bath this year, this time round, he got a bit too emotional. He was really fired up for it, and that is what Genji's great at doing. But sometimes you just need to temper the emotion. I thought he brought enough to that warm-up game, and he was very respectful, but the emotion came through with the ball carrying and the excellent scrummaging. So I think the scrum is not a worry for the Lions. If you can beat the Los Pumas in the
Hmm.
scrum, which they did, I foresee them
Hmm.
strongly beating the Wallabies when it comes to that set piece. Line out needs a bit of work. I thought there was definitely some confusion on the calls. I thought both Cowan Dickey and Kelleher,
Hmm.
there was a couple of things that needs to be worked out on the throwing, although I thought they both played well in all of the parts on the pitch. I do think there were some standout players who usually perform really well for their clubs and country, but didn't really shine in that warm up match. I thought Atoji was a bit quiet, although I think he's a great leader and I'm glad he's the captain of the
Hmm.
Lions this time round. But maybe it's nerves. I'm not sure. I'd like to say it is because I rate Atoji a lot and he can do a lot of damage in disrupting the line out and the
Hmm.
breakdown. I don't think Tom Curry had his best game. I don't think Marcus Smith had his best game, although he's more of a fly half than a fullback for me. And I don't see Marcus Smith starting ahead of Finn Russell and Finn Smith. And I'm sure there's a lot of people in the rugby world who will probably agree with me on that one. However, it's nothing to be disappointed about. The Pumas were
Mm.
great when it came to kicking the ball under the high ball. Their aerial game was fantastic. And okay, they infringed more, but they capitalized more on the opportunities. When you looked at the breakdown of the statistics, each time the Los Pumas went into the 22, they came away with more points than the British and Irish
Mm.
Lions did. So, if anything, it's a really positive fixture for the Lions. And I hope they see it in that way, that it's raised a couple of teething issues, things that can be improved on. And you'd rather have that in a warm up match than going to face the Wallabies in the 3 tests.
Definitely. And I think just to add on the players that were a bit quiet, I thought Jack Morgan, I was very excited to see him start. And I just thought he was so well deserved getting a start for the Lions. And I thought he was a bit quiet. He didn't have a bad game, but it was
Mm.
just I wished that we could see more of him. But I do think there's probably a lot of nerves involved in playing for the Lions because it is a very big thing and it's a very big occasion and it's something that rugby players dream of to be a part of. So yeah, I think probably nerves involved. You could see in the Lions' defense, it was a bit scattered and, not gelling well. But when I saw the team on paper, I was like, if this team gels, like they are going to be
Mm.
so good. So I think the next few matches would be great for Andy Farrell to test out combinations and to give players another chance. And yeah, so I don't think it's a train smash. I think there's a lot of things that aren't unfixable. It's few improvements here and there. And if the team gels and spend more time together in training, then it might click for them. And yeah, I just think massive congrats to Argentina because I think the days where you write off Argentina are over.
Long gone.
People long gone. And I think people often forget that they beat every Southern Hemisphere team last year in the Rugby Championship who they played against. So they beat Australia, the All Blacks, and the Springboks once. So I'm very excited to see how they'll be performing in this year's Rugby Championship.
Mm.
And yeah, it's good to see that they're performing well. Argentina also went through a lot of dips in their performance, and yeah, just very excited to also see where they are headed.
Yeah, congratulations to the Los Pumas, commiserations to the British and Irish Lions, but hopefully the Lions will bounce back stronger now that they're in the Southern Hemisphere and have their full squad with them now that the Gallagher Prem and the URC is over. Okay, moving back to talking about the URC and one South African team in particular. Now, we don't like to talk about rumours too much on this show. We like to talk more about news than stuff that could be proven to be wrong. But often, rumours that are reported in the rugby world do turn out to be true. Now, the club in question is the Vodacom Bulls. They've got to 3 URC finals, lost every single final that they have played in. But probably the most disappointing one was this year against Leinster. And Bernice, we talked about on the show last week that we felt that there was a completely different team, like a really lackluster team that fought up against, well, they didn't even fight up against Leinster. I thought Leinster just powered all over them, and fair play, Leinster deserved the trophy as a result. But there's been a couple of things reported by South African media outlets saying that Jake White is potentially under the fire as a result of a culmination of things, but particularly to do with some of his comments in the media. Bernice, do you want to expand for us?
Yeah, I think this has obviously been the topic of the week. That is what you saw everywhere over the weekend on social media, and I think the whole Jake White thing, it's probably come like a long way. It's not just one thing that's made like the senior players like Ruan Orkia and Marshall Gutsia actually call in management to say, listen, we're not happy with his leadership style. And there's also some players that are threatening to not renew their contracts, threatening to no longer play for the team, which is not great. But I think there was just a build up of things. So at the start of the season, Jake White made a public comment about Kanan Moody, saying Kanan should rather stay away from the buffet, which he kind of made off as, it was a joke. And yeah, so it wasn't great. Kanan Moody just came back from an injury, and you could see that comment visibly affected his play.
Of course.
And because now, obviously, he's like, okay, all eyes on me. I'm already not confident coming back from an injury. I'm trying to find my feet. So there's a lot of things that they play a role. And now your coach puts out that comment. And then, okay, he made that comment later in the season. The Bulls are playing the Stormers at Loftus, and all of the clubs decided to release the injury list, right? Except for the Vodacom Bulls. And Jack White made a comment in the build up to the match saying, oh, yeah, the only players missing on the Stormers injury list is Gert Smal and Karel du Plessis. Now, if you don't know, Tash, they are retired players who played for the Springboks long time ago. So it was just kind of like a petty remark. Um, and then the Stormers won the match at Loftus, and John Dobson kind of clapped back and he just said, yeah, he thought Evan Roos filled in pretty well for Gert Smal.
Mm,
And, we had a laugh about that. But yeah, I just think it's petty things like that that's, it's not really, if you decide you don't want to put out an injury list, it's fine.
mm,
But, fans want to know that feedback. Fans want to know, okay, what's happening to that
yeah.
player? So that you don't see a bunch of people comment on the socials, where's this player? And then, yeah, I just think fast forward to the finals, Jake White made a few comments again saying that the Bulls will be playing Ireland, which,
Mm,
the Bulls also had 12 Springboks on their side, which is not great. So obviously the Bulls kind of went in with the mindset of like, okay, well, our coach sees us playing against Ireland. Now they are putting the burden on their back because they are saying, oh, we're playing Ireland. Like it's kind of becoming this thing where you think, oh, it's unreachable. Like, how are we going to do this? And then after the final, he made more comments saying things like he also wished that the Bulls had a player like Argeo who could break open the defense, and he wished that they would have more international players because that's what he's been saying the whole time. So I don't really see accountability from him.
mm.
I know that it's a collective thing if you do lose, but there's no accountability. It's kind of like he's dissociating himself from the team. And it obviously creates a divide. So there's just a
Yes.
lot that's been said and a lot that's been going on.
I think it's really interesting to get your perspective as someone who lives in Pretoria and who has seen it going on, and you go to the Bulls matches and to do a lot of like the media stuff and the interviewing and Vox Pops. For a PR end, this is a nightmare. This is an absolute nightmare. Now, it's not, I know what's going to be happening. The media team at the Vodacom Bulls will have briefed Jake White because that is what I had to do in my role at Glasgow Warriors. And so did our media manager and our lead of comms. So when you're working in communications, one of your key roles is to brief players and coaches what they should and shouldn't say. I know a lot of people complain like, oh, you can tell when someone's PR trained, but equally, it's to stop people saying rubbish like this that damages the club, that damages a player's mindset. Because ultimately, when you're a media manager, you're trying to protect the image of the club. And as a coach, you should be the first person who knows that. And it's something that at Glasgow, a lot of the coaches turned to me and said, what should and shouldn't I say in this interview with this journalist? Now, I remember the Warriors were coming up against, I suppose, a big rival of theirs. There was a lot of talk in the media, which there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's good because it builds hype around the game. But equally, on a comms end, we don't want to give that other club any sort of fuel to fire them going into that match, because ultimately you want your club that you represent to do well. So I said, don't say anything that gives them something to eat. That's something to motivate them. And now, whilst the PR and media team or the communication team, however they label themselves at the Vodacom Bulls, will have briefed Jake White, do not do this. Do not say stuff like this. Do not say anything that brandishes the club or any players poorly and not in a positive manner. And he's gone and done it anyway. Now, he's probably thinking, this is funny. This is kind of a jab that will maybe motivate them. And it's had the absolute opposite effect. And an interesting story, I think, from a different sport is in the 1990s, when you had Sir Alex Ferguson looking after Manchester United, which is one of the biggest football teams worldwide, effectively. And that was the glory years when Manchester United won loads of trophies in the late 90s. And Roy Keane, who was part of the big caliber of players, he basically never play for Manchester United again after he'd given a very critical interview to Manchester United's in-house broadcast team, MUTV. That never aired because the comments reflected negatively on the club. Fergie pulls Roy Keane to the side and goes, "You're never playing for this club again." And Keane came out with these comments when it was debating about his contract renewal. So it was never going to end well for Keane. So if you have a coach who is all about, we are one group, everyone in this club contributes to our success, and we lift each other up and say positive things about each other, give constructive feedback, but you defend in public, criticize in private. And Jake White has done the opposite. So from a comms end, it's nightmare to manage because the people working, the internal staff working in that club will have tried their best efforts to go, please just control it. Don't say what you want to say. So it's not their fault. It's definitely Jake White thinks he's got a quick-witted tongue and it's backfired on him massively. But if you're a Vodacom Bulls fan, we would like to hear from you. Let us know in the comment section. Do you think Jake White will go? Do you think he should go? Do you want him to stay? Are you on the side of the players? Or do you think that it's part of the humour? Is that, from an English point of view, if someone said that to me, I would hate that. But is that part of the banter that is had in your part of the world? I don't know. If it is, let us know. We'd be interested to hear. Bernice has offered her insight from living in Pretoria, but I think we've both decided that it's not a good look at all on a media end and isn't healthy for the players, quite frankly. And ultimately, you have to put player welfare first. And I'm not just talking about the physical stuff, head-on-head contact, tackling correctly. That's all very important, but the mentality is equally as important. So we will see what happens. Equally, nothing has been decided when we're recording this episode on the 23rd of June, 2025. Nothing has been confirmed. There is no set news, and the club top management haven't made a verdict yet on what is going to happen, but I'm sure we will find out in coming weeks. We're going to take a brief break there and then we'll be back. Hello and welcome back to Her Side of the Ruck. Always, as we always do in the second part of the show, we will be doing our usual segments: red card, yellow card, penalty, and our rugby confessions. Starting off though with red card, yellow card, penalty. And I suppose the way I'm trying to phrase the verdict that we're going to decide on this one is deciding whether a team should get a red card, yellow card, penalty, or it's just a rugby incident when they don't kick or pass the ball out wide to the winger when the ball isn't going any further in the ruck towards the try line. Now, I know that might be like, oh, what am I thinking here? But we all know one point when a winger is stood on the side going, me, I'm free. And the biggest one for me is from an English game that I was in attendance at, where Leicester Tigers were playing Sale Sharks. You've got Adam Radwan, who is absolutely electric. And quite frankly, I'm gutted that he's not been selected for England on their summer tour to Argentina. And then Andre Pollard, he kind of skews the kick, but it works out perfectly because Radwan kind of runs in, catches it and grounds it. And it made the highlight reel for the rest of the week leading up to that final against Bath. So I'm glad that Pollard, although he knew that he didn't execute it correctly, but it worked out perfectly. Like, I'm glad that he did that kick and saw the space, but there are so many teams who don't utilize that opportunity when it is the right time to. So we're making a verdict on that hypothetical. For me, it's a yellow. I think there are times when actually using the power of the forwards isn't necessarily a bad thing. And if it's a tight game and you believe you can score under the posts, I get it because it's an easier conversion. As if you kick it out wide to the winger and you haven't got the advantage, you could just give the ball back to the opposition side. Now, if you have got the advantage, the ball's going nowhere in the ruck and you don't kick it, you're losing out on 5 points, in my opinion. And that's why I'm like, you need 10 minutes to sit down and think about what you've done. It's a yellow.
And hopefully come back a better player and not do it again.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm with you on the yellow. I think it differs depending on the circumstances. So if it's a tight match, you're trailing on the scoreboard, and you've been in the 22 for like 10 minutes, and you just like can't get over the try line. Now you don't want to pass to the winger. The winger's just standing there, you have a one-on-one and you try to go on your own and then you get held up, that is an immediate red card because the winger probably was open and there was a 3-on-1
Yeah.
and you decided you're gonna go on your own and then held up or the player goes over the ball, penalty to the other team. Like, no, 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 no. That is red.
Yeah.
But if I think I'm with you on that one. If you are ahead on the scoreboard or if you do have that advantage, then by all means, it's fine. Like, then you can try to go on your own. But also, I hate it when teams pick and drive, and then you can clearly see like the winger is wide open. Like, you just need to pass the ball to him. And then it's also a winger that like steps, and then he would, if it's a one-on-one, he would score a try.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's actually like a no-brainer that it's definitely more than a penalty always. So it would either be yellow
Yes.
or red. But depending on the score, I think that would be the mitigation. But please pass to the wingers. Like we have such great wingers in our teams. Please pass to them. Like we want to
Exactly.
see them score a try.
Exactly. They don't train, they don't do like sprinting training for no reason. They don't do all the power training to be so fast. If they're not gonna, they're the try scoring machines. And I know people are probably thinking maybe spread the love out and let other people score tries. But ultimately, wingers are there to score tries and stop tries being scored in their 22. So yeah, I think the severity is warranted with yellows. And as you say, the pick and drive where it's no dynamism, no real thought, and it's not going anywhere, and then it gets turned over or the penalty goes to the other opposition, the defending team. Yeah, it's a red for me because when you're a supporter watching that, you're just like, why didn't you kick it or pass it to the winger because there was open space and the winger was out there on his own or one-on-one with that defender, as you say. So yellows for us unless the team makes silly decisions, and then it's a red because it's just like, you're a professional rugby player, know better, do better, have 10 minutes or have the rest of the game to think about what you've done. Okay, moving on to our final section, rugby confessions. We received this as a comment on one of our posts. We received this comment from Christopher on one of our TikTok videos a while back. And Christopher said, I would want to see that rugby remove yellow cards for the head contact and the 20-minute red card because it's gone soft. Now, I would like a bit of clarification from Christopher, which I'm sure he won't be able to give us in the meantime of me looking at my phone and recording this. Does he mean head on head? Does he mean shoulder to head? Because there's been a lot of decisions in the past few weeks that have definitely been
Mm.
controversial, and either because the
Mhm.
referee has followed the rule book by the T or has explained it through grey
Mm.
terms, but it's still been clear. So for me, if it is a direct head on head with malice, you've got potential to lower. I understand
Mhm.
why you want to get rid of the 20-minute red card and the yellow card because that is dangerous play. That should be immediately a red because that is your job as a rugby player to tackle someone safely and correctly. It's like working any other industry, or like if you're a health and safety manager, for example, and you don't do your health and safety checks for a building that you look after, and then there's a fire and people die. I know that's a big analogy and hypothetical, but that is basically the equivalent of a rugby player not learning how to tackle safely and correctly in lines with World Rugby's laws. So I agree with Christopher on that end when it comes to get rid of the yellow and the 20-minute red when it is just like you've gone in and you've gone like that and there's no mitigation. But there are times when shoulder on head or arm on head or chest on head, and there has been mitigation because a player has lowered themselves or doesn't have time to lower. It's just a rugby incident, but because there has been head contact, it should be penalised. So I'm partly in agreement with Christopher on this confession and partly in disagreement for those reasons.
I think I've been hating this red card thing for the longest time, but the red card law specifically for this incident. So there was an incident a week or so ago in one of the Super Rugby semi-finals. It was the Blues versus the Crusaders, if I remember correctly. And you could see it was very accidental. Like the guy literally scraped past the other guy and just like scraped his face. was very accidental. One of the guys ended up like on the ground, and but it was accidental and you could tell. And also Justin Marshall, one of the commentators, also said, accidental rugby incident. No one could do anything. The one guy was changing
Mm,
lanes and yeah. So and then he sent it off like yellow card bunker review. It remained a yellow card because the bunker decided they were mitigation. But yeah, to me, like those things, and I do get where the confusion comes in from the referee side because there is the law and like there's a rule book and they need to say, okay, was there foul play, was there head contact? And
mm,
some referees, like we also need to remember that their personalities differ. So they might be more of a black and white person in their real life. So they might be like, okay, well, there was head contact, even though it was accidental, there was head contact, and they follow all of those questions and they go through it and they make a verdict on that. Whereas another, it might be more of a laid back person and he might be like, oh, that's not bad.
mm.
And I think that's also where the frustration for fans comes in because every week now you see the same incident. One gets a red card, one is not even penalized. So I think
Yeah.
that's also where the confusion comes in for the fans. If there were more consistency around it, I think we would have said, okay, we understand it more, but there's no consistency. One week, something that was a red, the next week is just a rugby incident. So it is very difficult. I also feel like no player is going to intentionally, with the head-on-head contact now,
Mm.
will bump into another player because sometimes the player that gets the red card is the one that is injured, is the
The
one that gets
most. Yeah.
injured. So exactly. So yeah, so I do agree with Christopher on this one. I've been hating that law for like the longest time. I think no arms tackles deserve yellow cards. That is my confession. I
Yes.
feel like
Yeah.
all the arms tackles deserve yellow cards
I,
because that
I
is more
agree.
dangerous and
I agree because again, it's poor tackle technique. It's not in line with
mm,
what World Rugby has set out for correct tackle technique. And look, these are
mm,
professional players. They're doing this day in, day out. They might not be doing contact every single day. Like I know that a lot of clubs don't want to do contact every single training session because they don't want to risk an injury to their players. But
mm,
these guys haven't just been playing rugby for 1 or 2 years. They've been playing rugby for the majority of their lives. So as they've been evolving of players, so have the laws and so has the knowledge of coaches. So
mm,
all of that technique should be grounded and founded in those training sessions leading up to matches. So yeah, no one's tackles for me are yellows if it's like kind of upright or
mm,
I suppose there was contention in what people said in the Leicester Tigers Sale Sharks game, and I was there because I was on the edge of my seat screaming,
mm.
where people said that Freddie Stewart, who is the fullback for Tigers, should have got a yellow card or a red for a no arms tackle on the floor. He couldn't have got any lower, effectively. And this
Mm,
guy's like 6'4", 6'5".
mm,
If
mm,
he'd done a no arms tackle, like and just basically pushed a player with his body, if he was higher than being on the floor, then yeah, he should have been penalised in my opinion. But when you're on the floor,
mm, mm,
that's quite a difficult one to do. And I do think the referee decision on that was right. Some people may come at me in the comments and saying that's because you're biased. However, you can't change it now. But there are kind of no arms tackles, purposeful head on head, or you're not lowering properly, they all deserve to be penalised in the harshest
mm,
manner. And I do think you have to take into account how the player who's been affected also lands. Do they have to call for an HIA? Have they been fully concussed? That's a pretty tough one. But there was also another
mm,
incident where a Harlequins player tackled a Leicester Tigers player in the air, and it was actually the Harlequins player who got red carded, even though he went off with a big concussion. It was quite a serious injury. They
mm,
didn't show the replay on the broadcast footage because of how serious it was. So
mm,
it's a tough one. I do think this is something that World Rugby need to continuously review, and I hope they do, and I'm sure they are doing that. And it would be good if refs are on. I don't know if this does happen. It probably does. That refs are on calls, talking to each other about decisions that they've made, and having end of season
mm,
reviews and saying, "Would we made this decision again?" But ultimately, these people are working with very technical sport under high pressure situations, and they're not going to make the right decisions 100% of the time, but there are some
Mm,
refs who are better at articulating it than others. And we've said on previous
mm,
episodes that we struggle when refs don't articulate themselves correctly.
mm,
But when they do, it feels like a breath of fresh air. And that just needs to be the norm, whether they take a holistic approach to reffing and the rules of rugby, or they take a technical approach. The main thing is being consistent throughout the match and articulating and communicating to the crowd and to the people at home watching why they've made their decision. And if you need to rely on the TMO, relying on the TMO. But thank you, Christopher. That is our rugby confession for this week's episode.
And yeah, we're also looking ahead to the Springboks playing their first match against the Barbarians. So the Springboks will be hosting the Barbarians in Cape Town for the first time in the history of Barbarians rugby. So I'm sure the whole of Cape Town is super hyped. I know the whole of South Africa is very hyped because Springbok rugby is returning and there's just a whole different feel in the air. But yeah, by the time this episode airs, the team will be released. So please let us know in the comments what you think about the team. I will also be doing a little review on TikTok. And yeah, hoping to see a lot of young players and yeah, just excited to see who will be in the first Springbok team.
We're going to leave it there. But if you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and a little subscribe. We really appreciate it. And also, if you want to follow us on social media, all of our links are in the description below. We will be posting lots of content throughout the weeks coming and the months following all the different international fixtures. I've got a little bit of exciting personal rugby news coming out very soon, but I'm going to hold on to that just for now. But stay tuned. And follow us if you want to find out what my little piece of rugby news is. But for now, thank you so much for watching another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. Signing off in the UK, Tash.
Signing off from South Africa, Bernice.
Thanks for watching. Bye.
Thank you guys. Bye.